Hola Lulia, mami. Today we're gonna see the second part of the prairie, the web of life. Let me enlarge this. Okay. Give me a second. Okay. For the vocabulary today, we have the word numerous. Numerous means many, many of anything. The word predators, depredadores. It's an animal that hunts and kills other animals. And here I put a picture of an eagle. Rodent, it's a member of a group of animals with teeth that are especially good for chewing wood, woody plants, or seeds. Scavengers, carroñeros, animals that feed on dead or rotting animals, and they seldom, rarely kill the other animal. They just eat it dead or rotting. Okay, so in this lesson, they start talking about producers, about consumers, about predators, about scavengers. So we're gonna talk about that in the prairie. Producers, remember, producers are always plants, okay? Are organisms that produce their own food. Wait, sorry, Scotty's like running around. Scotty, okay. A great variety of grasses grew in the prairie, and here I have a picture of different types of grasses: short grasses, mid grasses, and tall grasses, and then trees. Tall grasses grew when the rainfall was heavy. Remember that I explained before that where there was more rain, you got trees, and then those trees in dry years died. And then if you had a lot of rain, you'd have tall grasses, not so much, mid grasses, small rain, little rain, short grasses. Okay. So adult tall grasses grew higher than a person, so that's really high, reaching to more than 2.3 meters or 7.5 feet tall. And the roots of these grasses could reach into the soil 13 feet or 4 meters deep, so really deep. And it was really tangled, enredado. Those tangled roots help the plant form a thick cover for the soil. It's important to keep the soil covered to have many nutrients in the soil. And then you had meat grasses. Meat grasses were only 3 or 4 feet tall, half the size of tall grasses, and they grew in clumps, como en grupos. And their roots were not tangled. They grew in upland areas and needed much less rain. And then short grasses were able to survive where very little rain fell. The roots were heavily tangled, but they did not grow deep, rarely more than 10 inches or 25 centimeters. And these grasses covered the western prairie. Okay, so what determined which grasses would grow in a certain area? Like I said, rainfall was one factor. When more rain fell, taller grasses took over. With drought, sequía, shorter grasses would be stronger. In some areas, tall and short grasses survived together. Okay, and then we have more information about producers, okay? The grasses provided food for a great variety of animals. And the root systems allowed the grasses to continue growing even after the animal ate other parts of the plant, of the grass. And with which each year, young grasses would become stronger and have stronger root system. There were other plants too: wildflowers, flores silvestres, weeds, hierbas, vines, enredaderas, and mosses, musgo. And God gave protection to these plants with different parts like thorns, espinas, woody stems, sharp leaves, and that added balance to the prairie. Insects and worms ate those plants, and bees make honey with them, okay? And then we have consumers. Remember that consumers are animals that eat producers, okay? Or eat animal that ate a producer. Okay, so the prairie was able to support many consumers, both large and small. Consumers can be worms, insects, birds, reptiles, and mammals. And you can classify them in the primary or secondary consumer group. A primary consumer would be insects, larvae of butterflies and moths, the grasshopper. Some ate grass, some other ate plants. Okay, and also you can have big primary consumers like grazers, los que pastan, like bison. Bison were the largest animal on the prairie. They were so big, it was difficult to eat them. There wasn't an animal big enough to kill them, except decomposers and scavengers when they were already dead, okay? And another grazer that you had in in the prairie was the deer, and they relied on their speed to get away from predators. Okay? And then you have small rodents that were mostly primary consumers. Squirrels, gophers, prairie dogs, rats, mice. And they live in underground nests, nidos abajo de la tierra. They ate tender young plants, roots, seeds, and they would sometimes eat insects, but mostly plants. And rabbits are primary consumers too. They stay near wooded areas of the prairie. They need tall grasses and bushes to hide. They would use their speed to get away from predators, but they were a great source of food for secondary consumers or carnivore animals because rabbits can reproduce many times in their lifetime. So even if they ate some, there's still more rabbits. So there's a balance of nature for you. Okay, and then you had birds in the prairie, prairie chickens, meadowlarks, red-winged blackbirds, cowbirds, killdeer larks, pheasants. What did they eat? Mostly seeds and plant parts. They were primary consumers or herbivores or plant eaters. In winter, the prairie couldn't support all of the birds that it had. The second consumers, the carnivores, would fly south, migrate, because of the winter, looking for more food. Most seed eaters stayed on the prairie during the winter, but the ones that ate meat had to migrate and look for food somewhere else. Some hunting birds also lived on the prairie. They were secondary consumers, like they ate meat. Hawks, golden eagles, owls, falcons, and they ate small animals like snakes, insects, baby deer, jackrabbit. So here you have bird that eats a primary consumer. You can tell by his body that he just eats like plants. And this would be a secondary consumer. This is a bird of prey. It's made to kill. Okay? And then you have more about consumers, okay? The predators who were secondary consumers were important to the balance of nature on the prairie, of course, because they are like at the top of the chain, at the top of the food web, and they kind of like do population control, so it's not too much of animals. Ants, beetles, and wasps are ate smaller insects. Badgers, here, like this, tejón in Spanish, a skunk, una mofeta o zorrillo, and snake ate small animals. Foxes, wolves, and prairie grizzly bears fed on other animals they could catch, including other predators. So, okay, I know it sounds like really National Geographic aggressive documental, but it's just because there's a balance of nature and you need a predator to control the population of the other animals. Okay, and the predator groups had smaller populations than the primary consumer. They didn't produce offspring as often. So you don't have that many predators that they kill all the animals. You just have a small amount of predators that control the population of all of the animals that are under them in the food chain. And then you have the decomposers. Decomposers work, as you know, on dead organisms and waste, and they return chemicals to the soil. An example of decomposers are bacteria, mushrooms, fungi, insects, worms, okay? And they're really useful because they clean up nature. Okay, that would be it, girls, for today.